Hey, Mr. Clash here with a video about 3-starring with Frozen Witch, the types of bases that are kind of more suitable and the overall aim of what you're trying to do with the troops in a Frozen Witch. It's not just a matter of making the troops, putting them down willy-nilly and then having a go. Now, this video goes great in conjunction with another video I've got called 4 OP Frozen Witch Troop Combos. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. The idea is that if you encounter a base that, for example, would not be suited to one combination, then you can use the other combination. And of course, I'm talking about what you might be subjected to with the healers. Okay, so generally speaking, we'll have a look at this base. You're going to take a rage, you're going to take a siege machine, you're going to take a ram, and it's going to have bowlers in the ram. Now, your goal is to get into the core. We'll call this the core. If you can get into this with the bowlers, and you're going to try and keep your heal and rage for the bowlers. So just think about the bowlers in here, healed bowlers, so they're not going to be perishing. Double bounce, double bounce, double bounce. Everything is going to be getting wrecked in all of these directions from the bowlers. Okay, so in this particular case, the town hall's at the bottom. You can think to yourself, well, what if I put the siege machine here, that it'll have to path that way? I'm not really covering a lot of this. It's not really doing me too good. I'm not getting to the core. I'm going off on a tangent, on a weird sort of a tangent over here. So that part itself is no good. Same if you came in from this direction, no good also. So for this particular base, town hall in one corner, coming in from the other corner, and you're going to see this sort of thing play out a few times as well. Obviously, if the town hall was over here, for example, you can come in directly across and you'll still get into the core and you'll have access to that sort of thing. So these are the sorts of things to keep in mind. Now, when you're first starting as well, ideally hit a weaker base such as this. There are a lot of Town Hall 9 weapons in this base. The Infernos are not maxed. The idea is that you start to get a feel for how the attack transpires. Let's get into this one and we'll talk it through. We are going to have a look at 5 attacks in this particular video. So what you're seeing is, in this case, the attacker has dropped all of the witches on each side and then having the backup wizards for the top. My personal preference is to drop 5 witches on each side and 4 backing up the siege machine. And you'll see that sort of strategy making an appearance as well. Now, as the siege machine is coming in, you obviously need to use your free spells. You've got a bunch of free spells here. You are trying to get the siege machine into the core. That is your aim. The witches will path around. They'll be pathing around fine. They've got 2 healers on them. They've got a massive amounts of skellies. They're not going to be suffering too much damage. Getting the siege into the core, crack with the siege machine usually breaking in the core, and having the heal and rage for the bowlers in the siege machine. You're going to see how that combination itself is absolutely devastating for the guts of the base, for the core of the base. And that the witches just keep on pathing around the outside. Just like the original witch slap that involved healed witches pathing around the outside of a base. In this case, you're looking at the same thing as long as air defense is not an issue. Now, sometimes an attacker or a defender may, if they start getting hit by this too often, they will start to put air defenses in the corner. Now, in that case, you refer to the video about the 4 different troop combinations of Bow Witch, and you find one that doesn't involve healers. And in that case, you've got a combination that does not involve healers, and you're still going to follow the same principles that you saw here. You're going to punch into the core and let the siege machine take things out. Now let's have a look at another one. Okay, now as I was saying, try and attack a lower base. You can see here this attacker is not a fully maxed. So what he's doing is he's taking a little bit of an advantage with the potion probably one from a clan game or something like that. Okay, so following on from the sort of core-based principle in action, trying to come into the base to try and get the siege machine into the core. So we can have a few choices. We know we're going to draw a line from the town hall in through the core. Now we have a few different paths we can take. We can try and cut it through that way. We can try and cut it through this way. As you can see, if you draw these imaginary lines, it's giving you places where you can see what will happen if I drop, well, there's my, that one had a bit of a curve to it, but you can see this is the general path that will happen depending on where I'm going to be dropping the siege machine. Now, the other thing to notice here is he's bringing in 6 minions in this attack. Okay, so the minions are going to be playing a part, and you're going to see another attack that has minions as well. So instead of having extra wizards, he's having 6 minions in this one. Still has the 14 witches with the 4 healers. So he's going to put the healers on both sides. The idea is if you can get the siege machine into the middle here, raged and healed, the double bounce will just, it'll be phenomenal. It'll just, all of this stuff will just fall in a nice little circle from the double bounce. But you've gotten into that, your healed witches can just path around. And now you can start to see what a devastating attack it is, just like the original witch slap was. Let's have a look to see how he deployed it. Now I've drawn the lines on the screen. So just to have an idea on how this attacker approached it. Coming in with the healed witches on the corners. Like I said, you remember the old witch slap video, the original witch slap with the healed witches coming in at the corners. And then you've got the line of witches through the middle. So in this case, you bunch of witches, then the line of witches in the middle. Unfortunately, you don't have a tank. You can drop the siege machine first sometimes and get the witches in behind them. It's if or either or sort of a thing. So as you can see, pathing coming through this way on this side, on the left side of the Inferno, gets you into the core if you can keep the siege alive. Now, a freeze on the Queen would have been good. An extra freeze on the Inferno wasn't necessarily, but okay, the freeze on the Queen wasn't needed. Still have 5 freezes up the sleeve, and here we go. The raged, healed bowlers in the core, freezing the weapons that are going to be taking them out. The King will eventually punch a hole through the wall. Now, unfortunately, because there's a lava hound, there's pups. The witches and the Queen are tending to shoot the lava hound and not the weapons, so the weapons stay up a little bit longer. But you'll see the witches on the left-hand side over here. They could not take out the air defense quick enough, but the skellies, you'll just see how the left-hand side copes with the healers that have gone, and you can see how the right-hand side, these witches are now pathing all the way around. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 5 witches there. Couple witches, 3 witches in the core still. Queen still up. Ability still not used. Now remember, this was a low hero. Still has 1 wizard and 6 minions to go. Too many witches shooting on the expo. Too many skellies. The Queen will get through. You can see these witches around this side here. Black Bomb didn't do anything. They've lost the healer. The healer decided to path over and, of course, triggered another Black Bomb and got taken out. And these witches will eventually just path around. Queen's ability still not used. Game over for the base. Now, as we look, as the bases go up in more strength, you're going to start to see this same principle. When you start to see the principle that I just mentioned at the start, and you see it replayed over and over and over, then you start to see a pattern in this attack. Let's go have a look at the next one. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, what we want to do, is we want to draw out lines from the town hall. So this is the core area that we're kind of going to aim through. And we really sort of want lines from the town hall to go through the core. So we're just going to caress the core at each side. So this kind of gives you a rough area to make sure that you get your siege machine in there. And of course, if you wanted to go straight through the middle. This is the rough thing. So if you're looking for a way that how can I have a wider area that I've got a bit of a leeway to get into the core, this is kind of it. So in this case, you're going to be coming straight in. Anything inside of these lines will go over this Inferno box into the core, and as you can see, any double bouncing from this location is going to be absolutely detrimental. If the bowlers are here, they'll do double bounce, these will go out. If they're here, double bounce, you can see double bounce, that will go out. Now, I'm going to show you how that works later on in greater detail. There's a very, very good example of how devastating the double bounce can actually be. But this is a really good way, drawing those two outside lines. If you just drew a core, drew the outside lines, gives you a rough idea. Take out an Inferno at the same time. Now you might say, what if the person had the Inferno here? Well, then you might want to come through at that angle. Whoops, at that angle, and you'll take out those two. Once you get here, that's probably where it will pop, and they'll be able to take all that out. Heeled witches going around the outside. So again, let's just get into it. You'll start, I'm sure you're starting to see a little bit of a pattern about what's going on with the attack here. So you're going to have some witches on this side, going to have some witches on that side. Now remember, not all bases are square, not all bases you're coming in at a corner. Some you can come flat in, some you come right in at the corner. And as you can see, perfectly just about almost in the middle, drawing those imaginary lines from putting the circle in the core, drawing the imaginary lines to the outside, siege machines coming right down the middle of that. Now the idea, remember, the idea is to try and make the siege machine survive all the way into the core. That's the goal. You don't always make that goal. I don't think we've actually seen one yet where that goal has been achieved for various reasons, whether they're bombs, Clan Castle, the Queen get triggers on, and you want to save a freeze for something else, so you just wear the damage on the siege machine from the Queen. But anyway, we've got the Rage Heal in the middle, King's there, freeze on the Inferno. Just watch what these bowlers do. Absolutely massive amounts of work here. King has gone in. Watch the double bounce from these bowlers. No, they didn't quite get it, but just watch the double bounce action from all the bowlers that you see around the place. Heeled witches running around the bottom. Heeled witches at the top up here, and the base is just wrecked. Once that gets in with that rage area in the middle, you just look at it. Once that rage heal starts to happen, you can just look at the base and instantly know the base isn't even 60% destroyed yet, and you just have that feeling where you just look at it and go, yep, it's a 3-star. I don't even have to do anything. It's a 3-star. It's going to be a 3-star. That's how overpowering the attack starts to become. You look at all the witches at the bottom down here. Look at all the witches around the side. Massive amounts of witches left, which is going to absolutely destroy a base. Let's go have a look at another one. Okay, so in this one, we're going to be having a look at, if we do the same thing, I'm going to show you something else to keep in mind as well. So if we did the same thing, and we talked about this was the core that you wanted to get into, and you drew a line from the town hall to the edge of the core, or from the edge of the core, you'd be saying to yourself, I need to deploy the siege machine with inside this. And that would be an actual good point, a good way to deploy the siege machine. You could actually deploy the siege machine into this location. However, remember, you have to keep a consideration of what's going on with these air defenses. So you can see that there, no matter which corner you come into here, there are two corner air defenses. So if you're coming in from this side with witches and this side with witches, it's very hard to put healers on these witches here, because the healers will get taken out by this. You could put healers on these witches. However, the issue that you have with that is you're coming in so close to where the witches would be with a healer, there's a very good chance the witches will lose the healer to something in the core that will go in. Now, on the other hand, if you can come in from, or just remove all of this, and we'll just take this path from the town hall. Okay, so what this one is doing is it's cracking open a whole bunch of walls, including this wall, which means you can get into that. And from this box, you're taking out an Inferno. From this box, you've got access to these things here. And in this case, you'd be coming around from witches on either side. You can't put healers on these witches. So these witches, because of this air defense, so these witches have to go by themselves. These witches can have a healer, and that will keep them alive at least until here. So you can see that these witches will be healed at least until they've gotten down this side of the base. And that's a good portion of the base to have been obliterated by witches. They'll take out that whole section. These witches here, the skeletons and that, if they will take out here. This is the only place they'll lose a healer, but by then your core battle should be in. That won't matter. These witches should be able to path all the way around in the end. They should be able to. So by coming in this sort of an angle, taking in the Inferno, so we're going to make sure we get that box. This gives you a little bit of a box. We can probably get a little bit wider on that. Gives you a little bit of a leeway area where you can come in. You'll take out the Inferno, and you'll at least take out this. If you don't even crack that box and it all just cracks here, your bowlers and everything will take that out. Witches will take this out. That'll just leave this little section in here that I'm colouring in now that needs to be dealt with. And by then, you'll have that much left on the board. Easy cleanups. Let's go have a look at it. And then after this, we're going to have a look at another one. And keep your eye on, I'll point it out to you. We're going to be looking at the double bounce damage that happens over here. And that's why these bowlers in the clan castle with the siege machine are so devastating. So he's dropped a balloon there. The reason he's dropped a balloon is to make sure there are no air bombs right in this spot. So as the witches path with the healers, they'll be fine. Okay, so witches, healers, witches, no healers, and he's dropped the wizards behind these witches. So he hasn't just left them and the skellies to their own devices. The siege machines come in with the other 4 witches, I think it was, he had backing them up. So he's done I think he's done 5, 5, and then 4. I'd have to look at it again, but he might have done a slight little variation. Anyway, so you can see the siege machine has gone off a little bit. Now if you follow that path, it's going way off over here. So freeze, 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 keeping the siege machine alive. That wall's broken, got the heal spell down, got the rage spell down, and now here comes the bowlers are out of the siege machine. Watch the double bounce up here. You're going to see it in a second. This archer is going to go down, and boom, is down. That's down. All of these witches in the core, there's massive amounts of witches in the core. They do have a lot of splash damage to deal with, and they will be dealing with it. Queen's going to take out this Inferno. This air defense has gone down, still has the healers. So, lucky witches, right? So the bowlers are coming out. The Queen and the King, there's still a lot of witches over in this area. They don't have full health, unfortunately, so it's going to be hard for them to all make it, especially when they start going past all these little bombs. They're already sick, having come in through this area with a big bomb over there. So they weren't feeling the best. So we all know the big bomb with the 2 little bombs takes out witches. So that's what's happened. This one's made them sick, and these 2 little bombs have killed them off. But too many witches over this side, too many bowlers. King's ability still not used, game over for the base. But did you see how quick the whole base got wrecked once the heal rage bowlers came into effect? The bowlers just went absolutely ballistic. The weapons couldn't target them enough, and the base was game over. The siege machine looked like it was heading over to this right-hand side of the town hall, so that was a little bit disappointing in terms of the pathing of the siege machine. Also, do notice the 5 poisons, 5 freeze spells, sacrificing 2 free spells for 1 extra rage spell. Okay, let's go have a look at one last attack, and that will wrap up this strategy guide. Okay, this will be the last attack. Now, as you'll notice, it does have a similar sort of look to the first attack that we had, and that is Town Hall at the bottom. Okay, so we'll just move that over there so we have a rough idea on what we're going to do. And so we'll just draw the little circle here. We'll just make this the core of the base. We'll go from the Town Hall. Oh, my lines aren't very good at all, really. They're really quite terrible. But okay, so this should give you a rough idea. Getting the siege machine anywhere in here should path it through into the core. The goal is to try and get it into the core, this wall cracked, and have a rage and a heal for right in here. And then the bowlers should be able to take out pretty well. That will go, that will go, that will go. All of this will go. The healed witches will path around and the base will just be wrecked. That's the idea. That's the plan. The healers are designed, the free spells are supposed to be to keep the siege alive. Now, it can get a little bit tricky because you're going to have a clan castle coming out. You have got infernos, you've got expos, infernos, queen, but just pay attention to see how the heals or how the freezes are used to maintain the objective. And of course the funneling. Now, the other really important thing is that don't be overly concerned if your king goes wandering. It's not that detrimental. It's nice if he can go in, but this is just to show you this attack. The king can wander, and it's not going to be the most devastating thing to your attack. Your attack can still be a 3-star. So let's just get right into this. So firstly, we're going to have 5 witches with a healer, or 5 witches with a healer, 5 witches with a healer. Now up here, we need to get the siege machine in. We want to kind of protect the siege machine from just getting targeted by the double cannon. So the witches will go down first to try and get this cannon distracted by skellies, then the siege machine. So that's the object of that. So now the cannon's trying to deal with skellies. Siege machine's going to have a free run in to get the cannon. Healed witches around, creating a nice little funnel on both sides. A little bit too soon with the king. The king is going to go walking. Good timing with the queen. The queen won't have anywhere else to go. She will start to path in. And now we've got a slightly wrongly timed freeze that enabled the baby dragon to do a lot of damage, unfortunately. And double bomb, look at that. Bomb, double bomb, massive amounts of health got taken off the siege machine. Not planned for. This was a fresh hit too, by the way. Needed to drop another freeze about now. It stopped the queen. Too late. Okay, so now in this case, everything's happened. So the rage has dropped and the heal has dropped. So what we're doing here is we're raging the bowlers, just covering them, and now we're going to keep freezing these expos that are just firing on the bowlers. Just freeze the expos, freeze the expos, freeze the expos. It's important to get them down. They'll go down pretty fast. You just saw how all that went down fast. This has gone down already. There's just one Inferno Tower left, one freeze spell. Inferno Tower's gone, so we've just got a free spell. You're looking at the base. You know this base is finished. 2 wizards left. One should have been dropped up here on the right-hand side, but it wasn't. That got distracted within the flags. So if you had dropped that wizard up on the right-hand side instead of down here, we would take this base as destroyed at this moment. Now watch the freeze. There we go. Freeze the expo, then cloak the queen, and that's it. Too late. The queen's in. Double bomb. Would have been a hog killer bomb set, but the queen, no problem. And bang, that should be the base wreck there instead of if that wizard had been dropped up there. So there you have it. You have seen every one of these Frozen Witch has the same principle, and that is, we'll just watch this in replay again as we just cover it. So the principle is getting into the core. In this case, make sure you draw your lines from your town hall outside through the core just to have a little bit of a look. What's the area that the siege machine can get into? What do you need to do? Will it take out an inferno? Obviously, if there's an inferno over to the side, then that needs to be a consideration. Try and come in, take out both the infernos or something like that, like you just saw in the second to last attack. So the idea is that you're going to be using the freezes to try and keep the siege machine alive. If you need to freeze something on the outside to help your witches, then do that. You just saw a witch go down there. Not too detrimental though, because that witch didn't have a healer on it. But these witches around here, they've got the healers on up here. These ones are fine. These ones, this one has nothing, but these witches, they're fine. If you needed to keep them alive because of the wizard, then a freeze on the wizard would have been okay. It wasn't needed. The witches did plenty of their own really good work, taking out the king. Too many skellies, all things like that, going to take out that king. King's down, but this could have been a good opportunity to drop a freeze there as well. But the king was just no match, and the witches still survived all of that. So with the bowlers, the reason the spell was dropped in that location is because it knew the bowlers would get through. The bowlers would eventually get through, and that way it covered them once they broke through that wall. They gutted that whole area, and that just left the witches on the outside. So that is the same principle that you've seen in every single attack. The witches are creating this nice little funnel, siege machine into the middle, rage heal bowlers in the middle with the siege machine broken. If you can get to the core, great. You've seen how most of them almost got to the core. If they could have got in through this, it would have been the same result, obviously. And just a smart use on the freeze spells to keep the siege machine alive, to keep so recommendation, look at the troops that are used here that you've seen in the a few of the attacks, and one of them used 2 of the attacks used minions as well. So instead of having the 4 wizards, it used 8 minions. Have a look at the video in the description below about the 4 OP Frozen Witch combos. That way you can make modifications and choose the one that suits you best. But otherwise, all that's left to say is make up the troop combination with the principles that have been explained in this strategy video, getting through into the core with your heal and rage for the bowlers that come out of the siege machine, using the healed witches on the side to funnel and make their way around, and do plenty of FCs in your clan and see how you go. So that is it for this strategy guide. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.